Welcome to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. I'm your host, Fabian motherfucking Ojeda, and I don't know shit, but that's okay. All right, let's get this shit started. Thank you everybody for listening to the Ignorance is Strength podcast. Hope you all enjoyed episode number 35 with David Fedor, the super fan, the Bee Gees super fan. I definitely learned a lot of interesting facts about the Bee Gees. I don't think I have what it takes to be a collector, but I'm glad there are people out there that collect a bunch of shit. And we're back with a brand new guest. And you know, she's a mother and an entrepreneur, and she's somebody who's built a business through tragedy. Want to welcome to the podcast, Janna Willoughby-Lohr. How you doing, Janna?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Where are you joining us from? I know you're in the East Coast or somewhere in the East.
Yeah, I'm in Buffalo, New York.
Ah, okay, cool. So I think I was going to ask, have you listened to this podcast at all?
I haven't yet. I've been swamped with holiday orders, actually.
For sure, yeah. The reason I ask is because, I typically have a lot of like friends or people that I know on the podcast. I mean, I'm just pretty much starting off, and those are kind of like the safe interviews where they'll do it. But I've had like a streak of bad luck with people from the East Coast or from the East, where they want to book themselves to get on the podcast. I think I had one that I had to laugh at because, the reason I asked if you listen to it is because I do a lot of like little casual cussing here and there, and I think this lady finally listened to it like the day before she was scheduled to be on the podcast. So like the night before, she just messages me and says like, hey, I'm only doing podcasts right now that are going to be beneficial to blah, 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 blah. And I, at this point, would like to cancel our podcast episode. I'm like, well, I had to kind of laugh at that. I think she probably heard all the casual cussing and fun and whatnot and decided it was not for her.
Well, casual cussing is like my middle name, so I think we're good.
Yeah, they were definitely good then at that point. So I wanted to talk about a few things, want to talk about definitely your business, how it got started. Before that, I like to, sort of frame the picture, let people know who you are. It's always good to know even though people that are listening are not necessarily part of the conversation per se, I think it's always good to know like who they're talking to. I wanted to also touch on, you have your own podcast, and maybe, in the bigger picture, we can talk a little bit about women in business in America and maybe a little bit of politics, because I noticed you're online, you're definitely very vocal about politics. So we might get into that a little bit. How's that sound?
Sounds perfect.
All right. So Janna, I want to, like I said, I want to make sure we frame the picture a little bit, let people know who you are. Where'd you grow up?
So I am a Buffalonian, born and raised. Lived here all my life except the 4 years I went away to college. Mm-hmm. Came back to Buffalo before Buffalo really had our renaissance in the last probably 10 years. Okay. The city has changed a lot and it's just come back a lot. So it was really interesting to come back to a city that people just kept telling me I was nuts. Like, why are you going back to Buffalo? Because I was down in Asheville in North Carolina and it was like really happening down there. And they're like, why are you going back to Buffalo? And I'm like, nah, you'll see. It's coming back around. Like, Buffalo's really cool.
See, I don't understand. What was up with Buffalo? Was it just like really old school and like nothing going on? Or what was going on with that?
Well, Buffalo used to be, way back in the day was like a big, huge, thriving city. And then there was just like a bunch of things that happened in the history of the city. I mean, starting with McKinley getting shot at the Pan American Exposition in like the 1902 or something like that. And then it just sort of like went downhill from that for quite a while. And a lot of our manufacturing plants and a lot of the places that employed the bulk of the people that lived here all kind of closed right around the same time in like the 70s. And it really just depressed the whole city like crazy. And Buffalo has always had this really amazing arts scene and arts community. But other than that, the city itself was kind of, we were known for having lots of snow and decent food and like it's sucking pretty much, it's like that was the kind of general consensus.
Mhm.
And then we had a football team that would like almost get to the, get to the Super Bowl and then like lose a lot. And other than that, people didn't really know what to make of buffalo. And it happened probably starting in like the mid 2000s that it really started making a comeback. And there was just a lot of effort put into growing small business and bringing tech startups here and revitalizing a lot of our amazing old architecture that had just kind of been neglected for a really long time. So in the last 10 years, especially, Buffalo is just like went crazy. There's tons of people who move here from New York City, which is really crazy to think that people are bailing on New York City to come live in Buffalo. But there's just so much stuff happening here. I mean, yes, there's a lot of like kind of urban gentrification and like, making the crap neighborhoods into the new cool neighborhoods and kind of pricing people out. And, the real estate market here has gotten crazy. I mean, probably 15 years ago, you could have bought most houses in this city for under $100,000. And now, I mean, like
that's unheard of. Yeah.
It was like I know you're on the West Coast, so that's like not happening anywhere out there, but it's not at all like that anymore. I mean, now even like the crappiest houses that need tons and tons of work are going for like 80, 90 grand, which is like unheard of. You could have got that same house for like 10 grand, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So yeah, there's been a lot happening here. So it's cool to kind of have been back in Buffalo since 2004 and really just been part of the force that's been changing our city and bringing it back to life, which is just so cool to see new things happening all over the place, which is nice. So you should come see Buffalo when it's, not global pandemic.
Yeah, I might. Yeah. After the whole, we're done with all the masks and vaccines and all that stuff. But, I noticed in your background, and people can't see this at home, but you've got a lot of tools. You got a lot of craft stuff, right? I know we'll talk about your business in a bit, but have you always been like a crafty person that like, putting things together? Like when you were in school, did you love making projects and stuff like that? Or is that something you picked up later?
So I've always loved making stuff, especially paper crafting, origami, rubber stamps, collage. Even when I was a real little kid, my mom was a paper crafter and a rubber stamp artist and a collage artist. So I kind of grew up among that. And she was also a poet. So I started writing poetry when I was probably 5, and I definitely continued to do that. And I would kind of make my own journals and then write poems in them when I was a kid. And all through high school. And when I went away to college, I initially wanted to be a writer. So I went to school for writing. And as soon as I got to the campus, there was just this kind of wild creative vibe. And looking through all the art classes that they had, there was just so many interesting classes that I'd never even known was a possible thing you could study. So I started taking all these book arts classes and learning about bookbinding and paper making and that kind of stuff. And I just fell in love with it. And I was like, oh, it's my jam. Where you been all my life,
See, I like hearing stories like that where people like they actually find, what they want to do while going to school. My degree's in liberal arts. I'm like, what the hell do you do with liberal arts? But I work, I work with kids, so that's something, but it's like, I'm like, I'm not passionate about liberal arts.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story because when I decided that I was like, oh, I'm going to take all these classes my freshman year of school, I got to the end of the freshman year and I met with my advisor and I said, hey, here's all the classes I took this year. What major am I working towards? Like, those are all electives, so nothing. And I was like, well, shit, like I'm here on a scholarship. I could not have wasted an entire year of school. What do I do now? What should I do? And thank God for my awesome advisor. He was so great. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I really love making paper and I love making books and using this art form to incorporate my poetry and my life experiences and storytelling, and then use this art form to share with other people in a way that they have to experience it. And it's more than just kind of hearing a poem or looking at a painting or something like that. They have to really interact with it and open the book and touch it. And it's all about how it feels and they become part of the artwork. And I was like, I want to do that forever and I don't want to be broke. How do I do that?
Yeah, That's always good, right?
Yeah. And so he was like, well, you should do that as your major. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he told me that they had a major at the school. I went to a school called Warren Wilson College that was outside of Asheville, North Carolina, little teeny tiny liberal arts school. And they had this major called integrative studies where you could make up your own major.
Oh, wow.
And it was not easy. I mean, you had to pick out every class you wanted to take and, decide on a thesis project and a, senior year internship and all this stuff when you were at the end of your first year, and pitch it to the board and like do this whole presentation, and they had to approve it and all that stuff. But he was like, you already know what you want to do. So I wouldn't try and fit what you want to do into some other major. You should make a major that's exactly what you want to do and spend 4 years doing that. And so I did. I made up my own major, and I put entrepreneurial business and creative art together as one course study. And I spent 4 years figuring out how to make money as an artist. So I started my business when I was 21 and have been doing it ever since.
That's making college work for you right there. So I definitely applaud that. Now, you talked a little bit about, some of a little bit about your business, right? I want to get a little deeper into that. What is your business? Like, what do you do?
Okay. So my business is called Papercraft Miracles, and we're an eco-friendly handmade paper art company. And so we make magical things out of paper that bring meaning to people's lives. And we do everything from handmade stationery for wedding invitations, for people to write special letters to other people. We do hand-bound books of all different kinds, journals, sketchbooks, photo albums, that kind of stuff. And then we also make super hyper realistic paper flowers. And we also have a little corner of our business where we make seed bombs, which if you don't know what seed bombs are, they're made of recycled paper and they have seeds embedded right in them. You dip them in water, you plant them outside, and they grow. So we make those in all sorts of fun shapes, and they're just fun. And people are like, what the hell are these things? And once they hear what they are, they're like, that's super cool. I want to give those out as a favor at my event, or I want to send those to all my clients, or I want to give it to somebody as a present, because we make them in like different shapes. So they're really cute.
Is this it's your business? Is this something you're doing on your own? Do you have employees, or is it like a family thing?
So I was on my own for a long time. I did it as a side gig for about 12 years, just kind of doing craft shows and selling to my friends and people that I knew, kind of word of mouth style, while I had a full-time job. And then after I had my first son, I quit my full-time job because daycare was more than I was making. And so I quit to stay home with him and to work on growing my company. And pretty quickly, once I was really focusing on it full-time like that, it kind of blew up. And so within 2 years of being home with my son, I already had to hire an employee to keep up with my demand. And now I have a team of 3 other artisans that work in my studio with me. And then we have a designer that we contract with. And then we've got some like virtual assistant people on our team that like help with the other stuff.
So definitely a small business for sure, but sounds like you're getting up there. As far as, some of your best-selling items, because you mentioned a lot of cool stuff there, right? What are some of your best-selling items? What's in the highest demand right now?
I mean, currently this holiday season.
It's a little different. Yeah.
This holiday season is a little different. We've been selling a lot of seed bombs and a lot of paper flowers this year. But I've actually done quite a few real special custom books and custom orders for people. So, I mean, this year for sure is custom orders. Pre-COVID, we mostly did a lot of weddings and events and stuff like that. So we would do, the whole gamut for somebody who would show up at our door and say, hey, I'm getting married. What do you guys do? And I would say, okay, well, we can do everything. We can make the save the dates, invitations, all the table numbers, the place cards. We make all your flowers, we make the favors. We got the guest book, we got thank you cards. So, we'd have people come and kind of book the whole entire wedding, everything except the food kind of, the food and the menu with us. So COVID has definitely interrupted the wedding business, and for all wedding vendors a lot. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, when you got to keep it to what, like less than 10 people.
Yeah. I mean, in some way, people still are getting married and having these little teeny tiny weddings, and they still have the pretty big budget that they were budgeting for, 200 people. So there have been couples that said, we're still going to do this, and we're just going to make it really extra special and extra fancy for our people we care about most, which is really cool. So we have done some really special stuff for these kind of teeny tiny weddings, but as far as like that being the bulk of our business, that has not been the case in 2020 for sure. But it's been nice to kind of have our custom order business, I guess, the sector of our business where we just make custom stuff and sell pre-made items to people. It's nice that we already had that set up. So when everything started shutting down, we actually were making a lot of flowers for funerals right in the beginning of the shutdown here in New York, because all the flower shops were closed. My office is in the same building where my house is, and nobody could get flowers for funerals. And we're like, well, what do we do? And so all of my regular customers and my friends and people that I knew, when they'd see somebody posting on Facebook saying, hey, we're trying to buy flowers and everybody's closed, what do we do? And they were sending over to me. So I was like working my fingers off making these flowers for people so that they could have them at the memorial that they did that had no people. And then they could keep them because they're made out of paper and they last forever. So they could keep the flowers. And then once things, they were able to have 10, 12 people get together, whatever, they still had the same flowers and they could, still have a way to keep the people together that way, which was nice.
Yeah, it's definitely real interesting. I haven't even thought of, paper flowers. You usually think flowers, they're going to be around for a week or so, but that's a good point. You have them around for life, basically. Right. I wanted to ask, because this is like a real kind of like specialty type business. You don't usually think like, let me go see what's out in the paper craft world. I at least I don't, So how did you like start to get the word out and grow your business? Was it through like things like Instagram or like, what's that? Like Etsy and stuff like that? Or how did you get the word out?
So initially when I first started this, it was 2003, 2004. So there really wasn't social media at the time, or anything like that. And I had built my own website, like coding HTML. It was not shoppable, but it had some pictures and stuff and had my phone number on it and my email, whatever. So I started doing that kind of stuff and just having business cards and telling every single person that I met, hey, did you know I make these things? And so I got business cards made that had pictures of the stuff that I made on the back. So if I met somebody who was getting married, I'd say, hey, here's one. And I'd give them a picture of a wedding invitation and that kind of stuff. So it's sort of like built on that. And then once social media became a thing, as soon as you could have a business Facebook page, I did that immediately. Because it was way easier to promote on Facebook than to rebuild a website at that point. And so I just started building up my Facebook presence. And then after I quit my full-time job, I really worked a lot on building up my Instagram and my Pinterest and stuff like that. And so I'm up at like over 5,500 followers on Instagram and almost 4,000 on Facebook. So like that definitely generates a lot of notice. But I just take every opportunity that shows up in my face, like I talk to a lot of people, I network at a lot of places. I'm really active in women's business networking circles and stuff locally. I'm on the board and chair the membership committee for NABO, which is the National Association of Women Business Owners here in Buffalo. And so that type of thing, I'm just like involved with a lot of other people who are in business. And so I know a lot of people. And since I've been doing poetry and I started playing music out in the world when I was midway through when I was in college. So I've been doing a lot of like music shows. I'm like, I just know a lot of people. So I just tell a lot of people every time I go places, I'm like, hey, did you know I make this stuff? And they're like, what? Cool. I know somebody. So I don't know. I just kind of work a lot on brand awareness, doing podcasts, getting people to write blogs about us and being on the news whenever I could get on the news, that kind of stuff. And it works. I
mean, that's pretty cool, and I hope people will check out, we'll plug it here and we'll plug it at the end too. What's your website or where can they find you online?
So it's actually pretty easy to find us. Our website is just papercraftmiracles.com. Same thing on Facebook and on Instagram, just at Papercraft Miracles. And on Pinterest, it's at Paper Miracle because it has to be shorter.
Yeah.
But you can, if you go on our website and you scroll all the way to the bottom, it'll just have like little clicky links to all the social media, and that's probably the easiest way to find it. And yeah, you can shop on the website. You can look at pictures, do all that kind of stuff. We got behind the scenes videos. So if you have no idea how to make paper, you can watch videos of us making paper in the basement, which is really fun. And yeah, it's been a really fun ride for the last, 15 years.
I can appreciate that you say that, you really kind of built your business like the old school way, networking. And, you're right. There wasn't really social media back then. It was maybe MySpace, right? But I mean, I don't think too many people use that for business as much as they use like Instagram these days, right? I wonder though, like, does it ever get exhausting doing the whole social media online thing as well as, the actual face-to-face networking? Because, I even with the podcast, I don't take the podcast as seriously as I would take a business, right? To me, it's just something for fun that, hopefully will help people out. I do a little side gig with barbecue and everything, and, trying to keep up doing, posts that'll get people's interests and trying to gain followers and stuff like that. It's really like, it's work, and
it certainly is work.
and it's tough to do sometimes because there's so, I don't know in the papercraft world, but like, if you're talking about food or something like that, or podcasts, there's like thousands, if not millions of options out there, So how do you find like yourself dealing with social media? Is it something that you enjoy, or is it something kind of that it is it's just more work?
I would say both. It is something that I enjoy, mainly because I am a super extroverted person, and I really love connecting with other people and helping people and sharing stories and hearing about other people. So social media is great for me because I have a lot of friends and relatives who live all over the country. And if it weren't for social media, I would never, ever have time in the day to know what the hell's happening with all of them. So I love that I can, throw something up on Facebook and say, hey, like, did you know this is what I've been up to? And I can have people all over the world saying, that's really awesome. I know somebody. And when I first quit my job, I was at home with a little baby and I was trying to grow a company, and thank God for social media, because what am I going to do? Go out to networking meetings with a little baby? Like,
right.
Maybe occasionally, but not all day, that's just not, it wasn't feasible. So being able to put a baby in a baby carrier and sit at my desk and, or sit on my phone and post pictures of what I was doing on Instagram and on Facebook, and just let people know, like, this is what real life is like for a work at home mom. I'm here, I got a baby strapped to my chest, and I got my ruler out and got my pencils out, and I'm making stuff, and all at the same time. And I think a lot of times people think too hard about what they're gonna post on social media, and they try to convince people that what they have is awesome. And for me, I think just being really open and genuine with people and saying, like, this is my real life, like, there are definitely days where I'm like, this is mom life. I haven't washed my hair in 4 days because I've been working and taking care of my kids. And I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old now. So, I mean, it's not any less busy than it was when they were babies. And, I'm still like making it work. And I don't usually have, 60, 70 hours a week to put into my business like most startup entrepreneurs would have to do in order to make things succeed. So being able to do stuff on my phone via social media for free advertising when my kids are, reading a book or playing is like, invaluable to be able to have access to that. And it's been so much harder to grow a business the way that I've done it if I had tried to do it 10 years earlier.
Right. Yeah, makes definitely a good point. You mentioned, being a mother and trying to balance the business and everything, but I know, initially in our first, messaging back and forth, you mentioned that you started when you started the business, it was, through, hardship, struggle, and like tragedy, right? Speak a little more about that. What's the story behind that?
So when I was a junior in college, the year I turned 20, the summer right before I went back to school was just really amazing for me. And I was super inspired, and I'd met all these amazing people. And I went back to school, and 3 weeks into the school year, my mom died on Friday the 13th.
Yeesh.
And I was going to school like 5 states away, and my older brother and I inherited our house from her, but we had no money. We were 20 and 23 years old and had this house that was like falling apart. Our mom was super broke and she couldn't afford to take care of it. And all of a sudden we had to take care of it while we were still like kids ourselves and had to kind of overnight become adults. And 3.5 months after that, I went home for the Christmas break, and I was like super madly in love with this guy. And he was like, oh, by the way, I just graduated college and I'm getting shipped out to the military.
Ew.
And I was like, really? Like, that's happening now too? Great. And then I went back to school the same exact day he was getting shipped out. And the day before the new semester was going to start. And I was like, well, you know, I got a new start. I'm figuring stuff out. I'm like dealing with the fact that my mom had just died. I'm ready to take on the world. She would want me to like really work really hard and keep going to school and do my best. And the day before the next semester started, my dorm burnt to the ground. Dang. With all of my stuff in it on her birthday. Oh, the same day that the guy that I really was in love with got shipped out to the military. The same day.
Wow.
So I did a lot of like, where's the cancer on the bus that's coming to hit me? Oh. Like, seriously, is someone making a movie about my life right now? Like, is that really happening? And then they cut my financial aid for my senior year of school.
Dang. So just everything mounted up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, any one of those things happening to anybody could be like the thing that makes you lose your freaking mind.
Yep.
And it was just like one thing after the next thing after the next thing. I mean, the dorm was on fire, and the guy that I was super in love with he was my person when my mom died, and just like dropped his whole life to help me. And I couldn't even call him to be like, hey, you'll never believe what happened to me today. My dorm is on fire. Because he was on an airplane flying to Germany, and this is all like pre-social media, so we couldn't like there was no texting or anything like that. So it was kind of like, if he's shipping out, like that's the end of that. You know, you'll see you when I see you, kind of thing. So it was really, really difficult to kind of have all of my main support systems just poof gone, and then be like, oh, and by the way, you have to go to class in the morning, and you have no home and no stuff. All of my journals for my whole life burnt in the fire.
Ooh.
All of my artwork. Like everything that I'd worked on for the first 3 years of college, like everything. I didn't even have an ID, like toast.
Wow.
And they were like, yeah, and now go to class. And I, like 3 days after the fire, I kind of stumbled around in the stoned stupor because I was a college student. I was like, well, what else am I going to do right now? I guess I'll do that, you know?
Yeah.
Still do that, I guess. And I looked at my roommate who had also lost all her stuff. And I just took one look at her and I was like, dude, all of our shit burnt up. And then we just started laughing. Like that totally insane wild animal, like rolling on the ground, laughing. And after that, I was like, it has to be funny. There has to be something that I take away from this. And the first day after that, I was like, okay, well, I got this major and I really want to focus on starting a business, and I don't want to be broke. And I had still been kind of unfocused about what I exactly wanted to do with it. And I started making all of these artist books about my mother and our relationship. And I was using those and sharing them with the people I went to school with my friends and my family, and saying like, this is how I'm dealing with all this trauma that I'm going through right now. And when other people were seeing these things, it was like, you know how when someone is like really sad and just dealing with something that's really difficult and you don't know what to say, and you're kind of like, they're there, this is awkward for me, man, you know, making those experiences into these books that people had to interact with, it gave people something to do where they could kind of access their own emotions about how they felt about it and how they could be there for me without it kind of feeling so much like I was just leaning on them. It was more like, I'm sharing this with you, and, you know, I'm looking for the good and I'm looking for the bad and sharing it with people. And people would look at these books, people who like had never, you know, cried around other people in their whole lives, and they would cry like looking at these books. And it was just so kind of transformational for me to see the power of art like that. To really make people feel connected in this world that was even then in 2003, 2004 was starting to really pick up with social media and the internet and email and cell phones and all that kind of stuff is just pulling people apart, and people weren't having as many of these face-to-face conversations. And so I really started focusing on how powerful that is, to be able to have face-to-face conversations with people and the power of connection. So I really focused on that. And I realized while dealing with all of that, I was like, that's what I want to do. And so that idea, that fostering connection and fostering communication is the heart of everything I do in my business. And so that's why I named it Papercraft Miracles, because it's the miracle that saved me when I literally had nothing. Literally nothing.
Yeah, I'm glad to see you, you know, use that as a motivating tool, because I don't know whose Indian burial ground you disturbed or what kind of voodoo you were messing with, but that sounds like everything just, you know, hits you all at once. And you're right. You know, that could have made a lot of people just kind of quit. Any one of those things could have been like, I'm done. I'm going to throw everything up in the air and just kind of give up for a little bit. But I like hearing stories like that, you know, where people make something out of you know, the mess that they're in, you know?
Yeah. It was certainly difficult. And I just kept remembering something that my mom had told me on the first day of kindergarten. I came home from kindergarten. I'd already been writing poems. So I go to kindergarten and they're like, hey, well, I want you to color this dinosaur. And I'm like, that's boring as hell. And I came home and I said, Mom, kindergarten is boring. And she said, if you're bored, you're not trying hard enough. And I looked at her and then she goes, do it because you can, not because anyone's going to make you. And so that really stuck with me. And even after going through all these crazy things, I mean, especially like losing all of my journals for my whole life, all of my poetry that I'd written for, 15 years at this point, all of it, toast. And I'd always written poetry and written in my journals to kind of try to explain myself to myself. Because, sometimes you're like sitting there like, am I a crazy person?
Yeah.
This actually makes sense. Or am I totally insane? So I would write everything down so I could read it again as if I were somebody else and kind of distance from these things that I've been thinking about. And I had always really relied on my poetry and my journals to explain myself to myself, tell me who I was. And once they had all burnt up, I realized I had no idea who I was. And I got to start all over again. And like, what better, fertilizer for writing new poems and starting over than to have nothing and to completely get to start with like an empty book and fill it all up over again.
Right.
So I really just kept thinking about that. Like, I'm going to do this because I can, because I'm able to do this right now. And I take that with me every day. So that it helps me every single day when somebody says, how can you be your own boss? How do you stay focused on your goals and what you want to do? And I just get up every day and say, what am I able to do today? And I just do as much as I can. And I don't know, other people look at my schedule and they're like, how are you still alive right now? But,
I mean, it seems like a nice kind of like, even though it's nice, even though it was tragic, it was kind of like a cathartic experience for you, right?
For sure. I mean, what a better way to see that, like, really literally see that life is short. And all of I grew up in a kind of a crazy situation. Both my parents were married to other people when I was born. And so I grew up with my biological mom, her husband, his girlfriend, my biological dad, and his wife.
I've already lost track.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I had 5 adults as my parents my whole entire life. And I spent Monday to Friday with my mom at her house where I was the baby. And then I spent Friday night and Saturday with my dad, who was on my birth certificate, but wasn't really my dad.
Oh.
And then I spent Saturday night and Sunday with my biological dad, where I was the oldest. So I got to be like the baby, the middle child, and the oldest. And I lived in 3 different houses every week with different people and who were in different relationships and different families that worked in different ways. And I had 7 brothers and sisters, but I was the only kid between my mom and my dad. So growing up that way was really, really interesting.
That's really kind of like, sink or swim. You have to adapt kind of thing, I think, right? I mean, otherwise you kind of don't know, like, where do I fit in? Who am I? So that's kind of crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a lot of part-time family members, but because I had all these different adults who were teaching me different things, and I got to see so many different relationships and what worked and what didn't work and what I might want out of a relationship for myself in the future. And all of these things. And I learned different skills from all my different parents. Like my mom really was just so amazing at teaching me about life and interacting with people and managing emotions and that kind of stuff. And then I would go to my dad's house, and my stepmom totally taught me how to clean a house, how to balance a checkbook, how to like make files and keep track of all your shit, like that kind of stuff. And there's just so many things I learned from different people that I think if you only have 2 parents or 1 parent, then you don't get to learn as many different ways to live a life. And I think I was really, really lucky to have that. And it helps me to adapt to so many different things. I just say, kind of roll with the punches, say, okay, whose house am I at? What's happening today? I don't know. Let's just go with it. I guess that's my home for now. And I got used to that. So it helps.
Quick thinking for sure. I want to switch gears slightly. I know you touched on, you mentioned you're involved in a lot of, networking for women's business and whatnot. In your opinion, as a woman, in business, is it, and I'm a guy, I don't understand, is it more difficult, do you think, starting a business as a woman and trying to, kind of make it big, for lack of a better phrase? Or, do you think these days it's not as big a challenge as it used to be?
I think both. So definitely being a woman and a business owner is hard as hell. And I'm not even going to freaking lie. Especially being a mother and a business owner, because in the world that we live in, mothers are made to feel like shit if you go to work, but you're also made to feel like shit if you just stay home and you don't bring any money. So like mom guilt is a serious, real thing that is built into our society. And it sucks because like nobody makes dads feel like shit for going to work ever. Right. And they get bonus points. So like, oh, good for you. You did some dishes and you like took care of your own children and someone called it babysitting. Like, fuck that. Fuck that. Like so much of the mental labor of having a family and having a household is immediately just put on women to keep everything together and deal with the kids, and that you have to sacrifice your career if you have kids in some way. Like if the kids need something, it's always going to be you that has to take that on.
Right. And
that's just the way that our society is built, and it's unfortunate. My husband is amazing. He does a ton of stuff, but even as a fairly progressive feminist guy, there's still things that he doesn't get about how much I am actively like working and thinking to be able to do what I'm doing all day long. And especially during COVID, because we have a 5-year-old who's doing virtual kindergarten every day. And my husband has a full-time job. He works 7 to 5 every day. So who's the one that's doing virtual school? Me. Who's the one that has to take time out of my day where I normally would be working? Me. And now that the kids aren't going to school, where I would have had like free childcare all day long, no free childcare all day long. And so if I'm, I had to either find someone to hang out with the kids for free or for low cost, or find a way to pay somebody in order for me to work at all. Or take time in the evening or on weekends away from family, which is what I'm doing right now, to be able to be in my office working when we don't have to pay for childcare. So, all of those things are sacrifices that I'm willing to make because I do what I love all day long. And if you look at the statistics as far as women-owned businesses compared to the amount of funding and capital that is raised to support entrepreneurs, 3%. 3% of the funding that is raised in this country goes to women-owned business. 3, right? And You know, when you see in like the big Forbes 500 list and they interview the, you know, the CEO of this company, almost always a dude. And in a lot of those articles, they say, hey, how do you do it all? And he's like, oh, well, I take time to do my exercise every morning and I have my smoothies and I do this and I do that. And not one thing that guy is mentioning all day long has anything to do with like managing his household, because he either pays somebody or he has other people in his family who are doing that for him every day.
Right.
And he doesn't even realize that it's happening. Like somebody is doing that guy's laundry probably, you know? And so I think that in the world of entrepreneurship, it certainly is more difficult for women because it's seen as something that's really inherently selfish for women to take time away from their family to do something that is meaningful for them.
Yeah.
Especially work. You know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've got a couple, I know at least there's a few, women with small businesses that are listening to this, you know, when it comes out. They listen, I think, weekly. So what advice can you give to women with small businesses that maybe one, either starting out or just kind of struggling and thinking about like not continuing with it?
So I would say if your business is centered around something that brings you joy and you love what you do, make a way to do it. Even if it's 10 minutes a week, do it, you know, and really try hard not to feel guilty about time that you're taking for yourself to do something that brings meaning to your life. Because there's so many women who give up all the things that they really love and care about in order to take care of their families. And then their kids go off to college and then they realize that they've spent 20 years and they've got nothing that they really have for themselves. And I think that's a shame, you know, like when you sacrifice the things that really bring you joy, I think it's hard to be a great parent when you don't have things that you really are happy about during the day. And so I guess my number one piece of advice is that people who say they can do it all is bullshit. You cannot. No one person could do it all by themselves. You can't be a perfect mother all the time. You can't be an amazing entrepreneur all the time. You can't be a perfect partner all the time. It is all about a balance, but it's not the kind of balance that you're going to get it right all the time. It's just like sometimes you're going to be a better parent and sometimes you're going to be better at running your business. And you just have to be gentle with yourself about that. And realize that, you know, when people say, how do you juggle it all? You don't. You just have to figure out which of the balls that you're juggling are plastic and which ones are glass. You know, like the plastic ones, just let them fall. You can pick it up later. Ask somebody else to pick that one up. And especially something like, you know, cleaning your house or, you know, taking care of your kids or something like that. If the time that you would spend cleaning your house, say it takes you like 4 or 5 hours to really clean your house. If you could make more money in your business in those 5 hours than it would cost you to pay someone else to clean your house, pay someone else to clean your house and go to work. You know, like your time is more valuable than that. And or like don't clean it as often as you would have before. I definitely don't clean my house as often as I did before I had kids. And I just had to be okay with that. And the rest of my family has to be okay with that. And if they don't like it, then they can clean. I don't have time for that. I'm busy, you know? So yeah, I think that.
Nice. I like that. Again, I think I mentioned it earlier. You know, I noticed you're pretty, you know, outspoken politically, right? Online, you know, a little bit that I saw. Now, I mean, we could talk about the political climate a little bit, but I guess my question as far as business goes, does that affect your business at all? Like, do people like start to kind of like, let's say, you know, like the most polarizing thing right now, you know, is, you know, Trump versus Biden, that whole thing, right? I mean, we're going to get past that. But did you lose any business because of, you know, political posts personally, or people don't really, I mean, care as far as that goes? I'm sure they do.
I don't think I personally lost any business that I know of from it. I know that I have certainly gained business by making my views known, because people like to support businesses that are owned by real people, and they like to see who that person is. And you know, my company in general, because it's a super, you know, sustainable company, it's eco-friendly. We donate a portion of the proceeds of all of our sales to LGBTQ youth. And we have for a really long time. And it's like right on the front page of the website. And, you know, throughout all of the, you know, the riots and the protests and everything that's happening all summer and is still happening now, even though there's not nearly as much news coverage on it. Throughout all of that stuff, I was like, you know, these are all things that I have been working and fighting for equity and diversity and inclusion throughout my life. And if somebody doesn't want to do business with me because they don't agree with that, then I don't want to do business with them either. You know, like that's all I got to say about it. It's like, you know, if there's somebody out there who really wants to buy something from me because they think it's important, and the fact that I believe that all people should be treated fairly is something that makes them not want to shop with me, then fuck them. Like, sorry, but like, I can't, I don't know. Sorry, not sorry. I know I hate that hashtag, but that's how I feel about it. It's just like, you know, I try not to be like super polarizing because I realize that everybody is in their situation and they think the way they think because of the way that they were raised and the adults that were around them when they were kids. I've been thinking a lot about generational trauma lately, which is something I've been talking about on my podcast. And that the way that people are as adults is directly because of the way that they were raised as kids. And there's a lot of people out there who don't even know why they believe the things that they believe. It's just that they were taught that way as a kid, and then they became adults and they have their own kids and they teach their kids that and they teach their kids that. And that's why we are where we are right now. And so I think that the more that I put out there that says, hey, the world doesn't have to be like that. You know, you can change. You can realize that the way that you were taught as a kid was wrong, and that you can teach yourself new things as an adult. And that when you do that, you can teach other adults new things as adults and teach kids new things as they're growing up. And then they won't grow up in a world that's like that. And, you know, I think it's been really amazing to see the ways that the world has changed a lot faster than change normally takes during COVID, which is kind of crazy. And people who work for racial and social justice can tend to get really burnt out, you know, like it's not easy work. And I try to remind people that like change is really slow, and it's the kind of thing that happens while you're not paying attention. Like all of a sudden your kids outgrow their clothes. You're like, when the hell did you get so big? Like it's incremental, and it's little things that you don't really notice until all of a sudden you can't see anything else. And so the type of thing where, say, between the Me Too movement has like drastically changed things for women in the world forever. You know, like, I don't know if you heard about it, but yesterday some guy did this op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal where he mansplained the hell out of Jill Biden and told her, yeah, you might have a doctorate, but you shouldn't use it because you're not a real doctor. And now that you're going to be the first lady, you shouldn't use doctor in your title. Like she didn't go to school and earn that. Right? And he like thought it was okay to say that, and has been like facing some pretty serious backlash for the last day and a half about it. Like the world is ripping him a new one, being like, that ain't cool. And you could have said, you know, back in my day, we didn't have to respect women, and that would have been the end of your argument. And like, but that's not the world we live in now. And I think that that's amazing. And that another big bonus for social media is that things like that are not going unnoticed anymore. You know, when people are saying and doing things that are not okay, it is now a thing where they get called on it, and it has immediate and serious consequences for them and their lives and their reputation. So I think it's forcing people to think a lot more and to really put practices into place in their daily lives for the sake of other people. And for a society as American as ours is, where it's very kind of me first, everybody else second, the pandemic and all of this racial injustice protesting and the social justice movement that's happening right now, it's really, really forcing people to see the world outside of themselves and how connected we are to each other, how much we depend on each other in the world to survive. And then it's not just you. And the longer that people think and act in their daily lives like they're the only ones that matter, the longer this struggle is going to go on. The more that we really focus on how we can be there for other people and make sacrifices for the sake of other people, the better the world is going to be. And, as far as a socially and politically conscious business owner, like, I know that I am on the right side of history in the way that I run my life and my business. I know that. And, for people who don't get that, then I don't want them as my customer.
Yeah. Oh, pretty straightforward there. I mean, I think you seem like the type definitely that's very optimistic that things will get better, but have you ever seen it like this? Like the political climate's so divided where it's like red and blue so aggressively against each other. Someone who wears a mask versus someone who refuses to wear a mask still against each other. People who want to get a vaccine versus anti-vaxxers, right? Have you ever seen it this divided before?
Certainly not in my lifetime. Have not seen it outwardly this divided. I think in people's living rooms and in the privacy of their homes, the world has always been that divided, and people just weren't as vocal about saying it outside of their houses. And I think that is one of the scariest things about having Trump as our president, is that there's, it was taboo for a really long time to like be a racist. And now people are like, yeah, but that guy, I could do it. He could do it. And now they just like are out in public being like, I'm a Nazi and that's fine. And I'm like, do you not remember the fact that we like literally fought world wars to make that not happen? Literally, that's the thing. Come on now, learn your history. It is hard to look at the world and see how divisive everything is, and how, I don't know, people say they're kind of split down the middle, but they're really not split down the middle. There's like extreme people on the left, there's extreme people on the right, and the vast majority of this country is somewhere in the middle. There's a whole lot of people who really just don't fucking care. They don't care because they're too tired, they're too overworked, they don't have any answers, they're on crazy amounts of medication to deal with their lives, and they just don't have spoons. They have no spoons to deal with any of this shit. And they don't. And they're just like, whatever, I'm going to let it happen. I'm going to doom scroll on Facebook in the middle of the night and whatever. And sometimes they wear a mask, and sometimes they hang out with too many people and they don't wear the mask. And I think the vast majority of our country is in that kind of middle ground where they're not actively hating on other people, but they're just kind of coasting. Yeah. And I think that the more we can wake up the people in the middle to help more people realize that there are more people in the middle, because the media makes you see it, that you're either with us or you're against us. You're on the red state or you're the blue state. But I mean, I think when you really ask around, or when you really are looking through your Facebook and what most people are posting about, most people are just posting about how they want to just be paid better in the jobs that they have, and they want to be able to take care of their families, and they need someone to watch their kids so they can do what they love, and they need somebody to take care of their parents when they get old, and they want health insurance that's not $1 bazillion a month, and they're afraid that they can't afford this or they can't afford that, and they're never going to send their kids to school. And most people are in that boat, no matter who they voted for. And I think we really need to get back to the framework of what we want as people, and realize that you need to vote locally on small local elections to make the kind of change that you really want to see in your life. I mean, if we all want universal health care, it's not going to start at the presidential level. It's not going to, we have to have, state electorates. We need to have our local electorate saying like, this is what the people of my state want. And the states put pressure on the federal government to make it happen, Of course, they're not going to do it right away because it doesn't make them any money. I think people have to kind of band together to say, like, I don't think that healthcare and education should be for-profit systems. And you can't profit from people's pain. That's wrong. Definitely. And I ask most people that question, no matter who they voted for, like, do you think it's a good idea for someone to make money off the fact that you're sick? who do you know that would say, sure, go ahead, take my money and you have a big fat house because I'm sick? Like, no one would say yes to that. But because of the way that the media makes people think it's either this or that, like, ooh, if you want universal health care, that's socialism. And I'm like, well, welcome to the whole rest of the world,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely need to stop letting the extremes kind of dictate the common sense conversations.
Exactly. Like, is there a compromise between like, I'm a super racist and not? I don't think so. Like, yes, there are people who I believe are on the wrong side of history. And, it's going to come to light to them eventually that they're on the wrong side of history. Same way as it was back in the 1860s when slavery was getting abolished. Like, we fought a war because half of the country was like, I think I should still be able to use people's lives as my slaves for free because I want to.
And the funny thing, though, that's always kind of disguised as like, oh, no, it wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights to choose.
Yeah, states' rights to choose slavery.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you're kind of cutting that off the end of the sentence there. Like, really, that's what it was about. It was about, do you think you should be able to own Black people or not?
Mm-hmm.
Literally, that's the basis of the war. And they lost. Yep. They lost. And they're going to lose again because it's wrong. It is wrong to treat other people that way. And, the fact that Amy Coopered is now a verb, that like some lady named Amy Cooper calls the cops on a Black guy in New York City and she loses her job. That's all new. You know what I mean? Like, that is the little incremental changes that are happening. And like, big companies are really being held accountable. If they say that they embrace diversity and inclusion, people are like, how many people on your board are of color? Tell me, show me the picture, not a stock picture. I want a real picture, and if they can't produce it, then they lose lots and lots and lots of business right away. And that was not possible before social media for people to be able to know those things about companies or even care. And I think that all of that gives me hope for the future. I think that because it's a thing that companies have to have, a diversity and inclusion policy now is a thing. That wasn't a thing 5-10 years ago.
Right.
The world is changing in that aspect. And if you ask anybody who's under 25, how many people under 25 do you think don't believe in global warming?
That's what I mean?
Like, the people who are actively saying global warming is not real are definitely not the people who are going to have to be alive when the planet starts running out of resources even more than it is now. So I have hope that our young people who are way younger than me at this point, like consistently breaking down barriers to be inclusive of other people and letting people live their lives in the way they want to live them. I mean, especially with, it now becoming a thing where the president, like the president-elect is talking about trans people in his acceptance speech, like he's the first president to ever mention trans people ever in an acceptance speech, like that even mentions their existence, let alone, cares that they have rights. Right. And like all of that kind of stuff is like that small incremental change that the world is changing in that way. And, I have this song that I wrote called Black Lives Matter. I wrote it right after all the stuff was happening in Ferguson. And one of the verses in it says, now a movement has been born. So of course there's got to be resistance, because that's how you're gaining ground to make change. You got to be persistent. So I think that as long as people keep hope for the future, that the point of a society is to help each other survive. Like, I don't know, a society that's built on me first, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it may be that we are at the tail end of having a capitalist society because it doesn't work for the vast majority of people. And I think we are going to go through more pain. We are going to go through more pandemics. We're going to go through more people not being able to eat. And once there is a larger percentage of people who are uncomfortable enough with the way that the system is, then people will start to make change.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I wanted to really quickly, before we close out, wanted to touch on your own podcast, right? What's it called? Is it kind of like a free form like this? What do you talk about?
So my show is called Reach the Stars Podcast, and you can listen to it and stream video right on our website on Papercraft Miracles. There's a little banner at the top you can click on, or listen to it on any major podcast platform, which is kind of fun. And I set it up as a collection of conversations with cool people who do cool things around the world. I love talking to people. I love hearing people's stories and sharing inspiring resources. And I just love helping people feel connected. And during the pandemic, for sure, when I couldn't be out meeting new people, and I always love having great conversations with people. And then I meet somebody else and I say, oh man, I really want to tell them about this cool conversation I had. And it never comes across the same way as it does if you were to actually be listening to that conversation. So I said, I've been wanting to have a talk show since I was a little kid, and I was watching Oprah with her show on TV and watching Ellen with her show on TV. I was like, I'm going to do that. Like, I want that in my life, So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to do it. And so I started my show over the summer, and it's been really, really awesome. Just, I talk to poets, and I talk to musicians and business owners and activists and just wild creative people who are just doing amazing things that are affecting change in different ways around the world, and people who are fighting through struggle to pursue what they love in some capacity, and that they're working really hard every day to make the world a better place. And so it's definitely a kind of a free form type of show. I ask all of the guests the same 5 questions at the end. So that kind of ties the room together at the end, which is really, I find that being really interesting to see how different people answer the same questions in different ways. And some people take the questions really literally, and some people get real like philosophical and heady about it. And people just have so many different perspectives on life. And I really love having a place to have those conversations and then to easily share them with other people. So that's what we do.
Nice. Well, I'm really glad to have had you on. I think you definitely showed us you weren't afraid of some casual cussing here and there.
A little bit.
which is always a risk when I have, a guest that I don't know, but definitely plug anything else again, even if you've already plugged it, let's let people know at the end of the show here where they can find you, either for your business, your podcast, and we can go ahead and close out from there.
Cool. So yeah, our website again is papercraftmiracles.com. And same deal on social media. On Instagram is @papercraftmiracles. Same thing on Facebook. And the podcast is Reach the Stars Podcast. And you can listen to it right on our website at papercraftmiracles.com/Reach the Stars Podcast. And I'm on Instagram for that at reachthestars.podcast. And on Facebook, you can just search for Reach the Stars Podcast. It comes up. We also have a Patreon to help fund the podcast. And it's patreon.com/Reach the Stars. And there's fun perks on there, and you blooper reels, and you get to listen to the episode early and that kind of stuff. So
nice. Last thing before we go, we forgot to talk about your band.
Okay. So I've played in a band called Bloodthirsty Vegans since 2008, and we've got 2 full-length albums out and are currently working on the 3rd one, which should be out maybe in the spring after, pandemic is less crazy. So you can find us at Bandcamp or bloodthirstyvegans.bandcamp.com. And you can listen to our albums over there. And in the band, I sing, rap, and play the trumpet as my alter ego, MC Vendetta.
Wow. I like the irony there, Bloodthirsty Vegans.
Yep. Oh, and in case anyone is wondering, we are not vegans. None of us are vegans. We eat vegans for breakfast.
And then we could throw, a couple of songs in at the end of the podcast as well, if you like.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, anything you want to snag off the Bandcamp is fine. It's just, we got some goofy shit up there, and we play all original kind of political, social action, stick it to the man type of music. It's fun. Nice. We have a good time.
All right. Well, Janna, thank you again. I really enjoyed this conversation because it was kind of, There's a lot. Not, I don't want to say all over the place. That's we're a negative connotation, but there's a lot of different things that we touched on. So, good luck with everything you're doing. You know, if you ever want to jump back on the podcast and have a random conversation, I'm always open to that. I love having previous guests back on. For everybody listening at home, appreciate it. Thank you. Fuck you and good night.
Subscribe to the Ignorance is Strength podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Like, follow, and share on Facebook and Instagram at Ignorance is Strength Podcast and on Twitter at The Ignorance Pod.
Straight for safety, and they in the bed that's dead. Why'd you make it? You ain't got to come and confess, we gon' find you. Run and tell that to your pack. Need to remind you the love of money can blind you, and that's a shame. And we are the BTVs. Who's to blame? Yeah, who's to blame? Alive on the planet Earth at the same time. And prior to the year 1972, there was never more than 4 billion human beings alive on the planet Earth at the same time. But now there are more than 7 billion human beings, all alive, all on the planet Earth, all at the same time, doing who knows what to whom. But actually, that's great news. Wonderful news for you and you and you and you too. Because now, with 7 billion human beings, no matter how bad things seem, no matter how bad in fact they might actually get, on average, only 1/7 billionth of it is your fault. talking no smack, it's just an actual fact that your mama is big into drama. That your mama is gonna have that karma. I ain't talking no smack, it's just an actual fact that your mama rides a purple llama. Smack is just an actual fact that your mama wears special tinfoil armor.
It's shiny but it breaks real easy. Let it flow, let it go, let down your hair. Let you uptight, let it slide, let down your hair. It won't be long till you're in the ground, so let down your hair. Get the feeling right, dance all night, let down your hair.
Your mama, the sweet potato farmer. No smack is just an actual fact that your mama wears Spider-Man pajamas.
Like a mission, it gets twisted and you know that ain't what I said. It's crazy all the shit that you can think of in your head, and that's drama. When just being happy ain't nearly enough, you gotta start some shit to show that you're tough. If you just learn to really keep it real, you find out that you got the sweetie deal with no drama. N-O-D-R-A-M-A, 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 N-O-D-R-A-M-A. And I can't believe you said that you are so full of crap. It went so far as to call me names. I couldn't believe that you were so fucking lame. I don't need your bullshit, and I don't need no bullshit. I don't need no bullshit
your
from
mama, who's still into drama. I ain't talking no smack, it's just an actual fact that your mama made your science diorama.
Yeah, she did. Chumame, chumamama, makusa. 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 Chumame, chumamama, makusa.